Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS, where on Fitness Friday, it is always the best day of the week. Gotta love it. And folks, I'm going to continue our conversation that I kicked off last time by highlighting, as I promised you, making this a leadership episode. And so I had my plan, you know how we all are with our plans, right? So I had my plan, I'm just gonna have this one episode. And I made the decision I'm going to break this into 2 episodes and go into more in depth. And so I'm going to continue this on actually 2 weeks from today. So 2 Fitness Fridays from today, going to continue this conversation here on openness and adaptability and pivoting, particularly in this unparalleled realm of the coronavirus pandemic and how that is impacting the fitness industry, particularly fitness leaders. And so next Fitness Friday, I'm actually going to, so after a long hiatus of this particular type of episode, bringing back Rachelle's Fitness Adventures. And as I highlighted last week, Rachelle's Fitness Adventures moving forward is going to be inclusive. So for example, the Friday after Thanksgiving, I'm going to be highlighting my fitness adventures from the time that I was in Shreveport, Louisiana, during the months of September and October. So some indoor, on the elliptical there at Oscar and Willette's Home Fitness Center, backyard fitness, neighborhood fitness, power walking and running, and so driveway fitness. It's all going to be included in there. So stay tuned for that. And so moving forward, as I alluded to, it's going to also include the next fitness chapter when that happens. So we'll be hybrid in terms of my working out at home here at Rachelle's Home Fitness Center, as well as my next fitness facility. So I will be highlighting adventures from both of those. And so stay tuned for those. I'm so excited to bring those back. But I wanted to kick this episode off again. This is a leadership episode. And so last time, I actually read a letter that I wrote to corporate of Dollar Tree. I love Dollar Tree. There's no secret. Actually, a few years ago for Christmas, I got a gift card to Dollar Tree, and I absolutely was not offended. I was so excited. But anyway, folks, so if you missed last week's episode, I highlighted actually a letter recognizing the manager Nicole of the Ann Arbor, Michigan store. And so that was the first time I had been to that particular location. I've been to Dollar Trees, as I allude to. I'm not going to read this letter again in the interest of time, but I've been to Dollar Trees in several states. I've got a nice breadth and depth of experience with that particular store. But the manager was very, very impressive as I sent this letter, the original letter, obviously, to corporate along with a copy of my receipt. And this, of course, is my original receipt. But I also sent a copy of this as well to the store there in Ann Arbor as well, and addressed it to Nicole. And so I was back in that store, was back in Ann Arbor again, as I stated. Whenever I'm in Ann Arbor, that's going to be one of my stops, that store is. And so this is actually, the 10th, so this is from the experience. So this receipt is dated the 10th of November, so I was back on the 17th. So, I mean, there's just several lessons that you can look at this and say, and as I alluded to in my letter, is that, I plan to go in there during that visit just for one item and then look at my receipt here. I know you obviously can't read each line, but you can just see line by line, you can just see the block of purchases there collectively that I made when I intended to go there for just one item. And now we can see the following week. I mean, there's marketing and sales lessons, just all over this that I'm not going to get into, but you can now see the length of my receipt on the 17th and how it grew. How it grew. So you think just positive experiences, positive customer service, well-stocked inventory, certainly leads to incremental sales, incremental volume, positive incremental volume growth, because when people go in there for one thing and they see the store is well stocked and clean and neat and organized, they end up spending far more than they would otherwise. So there's incremental growth, sales, and volume there. But won't get into that on this particular episode. But I just wanted to highlight something else that happened on this second visit of mine to that store. So I went in, and of course you had 3 people in there, including Nicole, around the store stocking various items. And so I actually went to checkout. And so one of the things that I absolutely love from Dollar Tree, this is not a product suggestion, a product recommendation or anything, but this is actually, I love their blueberry lemonade. It's real sweet. And I, just as one who spent many years down south, I definitely have that southern sweet tooth, sweet potato pie, and just things like that. And so this is opposed to being really bitter, like lemonade can be. It's really sweet, but it's a nice flavor. But anyway, so it is typically only in Dollar Tree stores during the summer months. And of course, the South, they seem to get, like Louisiana, their stores will get it sooner, probably because their weather gets warmer sooner than ours. So during the spring/summer, early fall, typically you'll see them gone by the month of September. But I bought 2 of them when I was there on the 10th, and then there were 2 more on the shelves. And then so I bought those 2 here on the 17th this week. And so go to checkout. And it turns out Nicole is checking me out. And one thing that I did not do, and this is just a growth area that I myself, just being very transparent, there is a time in my life, probably as recent as 4 or 5 years ago, where I would have made it a point to ask her, did you hear from corporate? Did you receive the letter that I wrote? Remember, I'm the lady who told you that I was going to let corporate know what an excellent job you were doing. No, I did not say a word, did not mention any of that. Because when I tell people, when I give verbal feedback, like I told her in the store, when I found her and approached her that first time I was in there, I said, hey, you were doing an excellent job, yada, yada, yada. Corporate needs to know about this. I mean, this is just very impressive. I've been into a lot of stores. And she probably thought to herself, like, yeah, people told me that before and nobody ever does anything, or nobody ever recognizes me formally. But if you watch enough episodes of mine, I'm very big on recognizing people, particularly when I see people going above and beyond the call of duty, and she clearly did. And so clearly she wasn't expecting me or probably anybody else to write a formal letter to corporate recognizing her like I did. But I did not mention that. But there is a time in my life, and I'm mentioning this because I want to challenge you in this area, where I would have mentioned that to her. Why? Looking for acknowledgement, looking for, oh, thank you so much, or, oh, that letter was great, or, oh, corporate did this, or they said this, or I got this raise, or I got this, whatever the case may be. Looking for acknowledgement. And don't get me wrong, I mean, everybody loves to be appreciated, whatever this and that. I'm not saying that it's wrong to feel that way. But what I am saying is this: we need to do things with right motives. Because if we're doing things, if we're recognizing, particularly from a leadership perspective, if we're recognizing people and giving people kudos and all of that, we need to make sure that we're doing it with the right motives. Not so they can come back and tell us what a wonderful person that we are and how, they've never had a customer like us or whatever, you can just fill in the blank. There's just so many different ways that can go. We need to do it with the motive of saying, hey, if this person doesn't say a word to me, it doesn't mention it, does not recognize me or acknowledge me or anything like that, we've got to be secure enough in ourselves to know that we did it with the right motives, and that person does not have to say a word to us. But guess what? Again, we've got to be secure enough to acknowledge and recognize people and all of this, and that people give people kudos and not say a word to them. Don't do it anonymously. Obviously, my name was attached to the letter I wrote and things like that. But don't follow up with people to say, did you hear? What did they say? And all of this and that. Because guess what? If they don't say a word to you, and you feel like you brought it to their attention, and they don't give you the thanks that you feel that they should give you, and they're not falling all over themselves for you, you're going to be disappointed in many cases, mad, I'm never doing that again, and that person is an N grade, and whatever, I wasted my time. But that's when that kind of stuff happens, when there's those negative reactions, you gotta ask yourself, what was my motive in doing this? Do you walk around helping people, doing things for people because you want to feel like a good person? Is it truly all about you and how you feel and how you're going to come across to other people? Or is it about that other person and recognizing them and elevating them with no expectations in return? And this is going in a direction I had not planned on this episode, but I just have to point this out because I would have been the same, a few years ago in that area. I would have mentioned it to her. Hey, I'm the one. Did you hear anything? I wrote that letter and this and that. I did not say a word. I did not say a word to her. So that myself, folks, from a leadership perspective, is reflective of great amount of growth. But that comes back to that motives. Why do we do what we do? Is it all about us and us feeling good about ourselves and people acknowledging and clapping for us? Oh, you're such a good person. Oh, you did this and that. Do things anonymously. I mean, if you want to test your sense of confidence and inner security, do things anonymously. Do things anonymously. But what happened? So she checked me out, this and that. And so, and I'm highlighting this because this is something that has never happened to me in a retail situation, a customer service situation before. So she scans the first lemonade. Remember I told you there's 2 of them. So, and then she turns it around, and I didn't have a clue what she was doing. And she says, ma'am, these 2 are actually expired. They expired on November 3rd. Do you want me to go in the back and see if we have some other ones that aren't expired? I said, no, that's fine, because again, it's liquid, it's going to be fine, just in my opinion. I had no problem with that. But I thought to myself, when I was getting in my car, putting the stuff in my car, like who has ever, and if this has happened to you, please inbox me, let me know. But I've never been in a situation where somebody has proactively looked at some type of beverage and said, okay, oh, you know what? This is expired. But that reinforced, because again, I'm a very good judge of talent, particularly when it comes to evaluating leaders and things like that. I'm a very good judge of talent. And so I knew when I wrote that letter, I knew. I can size people in situations up pretty quickly. And that too is reflective of growth and just really working hard and all of that type of thing, being objective and knowing what to look for and seeing patterns and things like that. And so I just wanted to highlight that example. Again, you've got a store manager who acknowledged herself. She runs a tight ship, and for her to check me out and another thing, and I've mentioned this months ago on a previous episode, when you have a store manager, particularly in retail, a store manager or store director, and you see them checking people out, but you also, when you look at your receipt and you see the name, like on it when it says the associate name, and you see Nicole on here. And so this was an example. And so that always tells me, again, one who can certainly evaluate people in these type of situations, that this is a routine thing that they do in terms of being a team players and hopping on machines and checking people out. If you see a store manager or a director, with all due respect to people maybe in this situation, certainly different entities handle these situations differently. But when you see a store manager, director, and their own name is on the receipt and they're checking people out, it just tells you a lot about that individual. You got a team player, probably with a decent amount of tenure in that industry, if not with that particular store or organization. And so just had to highlight that. It's fine, it's going to be fine, but pointed out the expiration date. There's integrity there, just wonderful demonstration of integrity, of not wanting to sell someone something that was expired. But it's also a leader who is taking full responsibility, certainly runs a tight ship, and thought to turn that around and look at the expiration date. I was just very, very impressed, but it reinforced what I already knew and what I already recognized. So enough on that, and we've got to move on here to talk about the applied lessons, some of the applied lessons and examples of, here we go, we got the SWOT analysis again. I'm not going to go into any of all of this, but just the threat. The tremendous threat I've been talking about since March of the coronavirus, and how in many respects it has upended the fitness industry, certainly like nothing else ever has. The fitness industry certainly had its share of challenges over the years, and it's just so important. And as I alluded to in the last episode, that we be open, that we be flexible, that we be adaptable, and recognizing that the way things have been done in the past may not work for you in the future. But if you're one that tends to struggle with being very rigid and very closed-minded and very just tunnel vision oriented, this has to be the most challenging time of your life. Because you may be sitting there, I'm just saying, one who is just rigid and stuck in his or her ways and refuses to adapt and change, particularly the change that has really been exacerbated by this coronavirus pandemic. Business as usual is not business as usual anymore. So it's very important that we all, certainly in the fitness industry and outside of the fitness industry, on a personal level, on a professional level, just be open, be adaptable, be willing to do things differently, be willing to look at different avenues and ways of doing things, because this is a very, very challenging time, as we all know. And so I'm just going to highlight some examples, but I'm going to highlight an example. And I've talked about the Metro Detroit market, certainly, which is a competitive market, a nice saturation of different fitness chains, entities, public, private. In terms of when I say public, I mean community, commercial, private, studios, facilities, all of this and that. And so what you will find when you have a high saturation of fitness entities in a particular market, and just utilizing Metro Detroit as an example, from a competitive standpoint, it is a real big challenge. So if you compare that with, say, a very small / rural market that may have one fitness player in town or two fitness players in town, certainly those entities may be challenged here in the coronavirus pandemic, but certainly not to the extent as those areas that are very big, very large, competitive fitness markets, top fitness markets like your LA, Chicago, New York. It is a very challenging time, and certainly Detroit is a competitive market, but certainly not a top fitness market. But so I just want to highlight one example here, just highlighting, we've had chains filing for bankruptcy, gyms closing left and right across this country, and I'm only highlighting one example, but there's a whole lot of examples. And I did not want to bring you down by highlighting multiple examples of this. We're going to shift after this into some examples of pivoting and some positive examples moving forward of what entities are doing, looking towards the future, and certainly planning for that. And so this was actually an example that I saw here. So it was October 6th, the YMCA. So this is an example from Crane's Detroit Business. So the title of this article by Sherry Welch is YMCA to permanently close third Metro Detroit branch this year. And so I'm going to read a little bit of this, and you'll notice as I go along, I have a lot of, just a lot of reading could potentially happen during this episode. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read all of these examples because it's lengthy examples, long articles. And so I'm just going to highlight a little bit to give you a flavor. And that's why I always provide sources. So if you're interested, you can certainly go back and Google these articles and track them down on your own for the full, complete articles. And I certainly encourage you to do that if you so wish. So it says, the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit is closing its third branch in 6 months to help offset pandemic-spurred revenue losses. The Detroit-based nonprofit is permanently closed its North Oakland Family YMCA in Auburn Hills following the closures of its St. Clair Shores and Livonia branches in May. The latest closure comes as the YMCA looks to offset the loss of nearly half, or $15 million, of its revenue this year with the cancellation or suspension of memberships, said President and CEO Helene Weir. The pandemic is creating a larger economic disruption for us than the last recession, she said. Unfortunately, this COVID economy is forcing our association to make some very difficult and disheartening decisions to make sure our YMCA can continue. The Oakland County branch employs 11 full-time and other part-time employees. The YMCA is trying to provide opportunities for them in other branches as it continues to bring furloughed employees back amid scaled, limited reopenings of its remaining branches, Weir said. To date, it's brought back 106 of its 174 full-time employees and 20% of its part-time employees. Even before the pandemic, I want to highlight this before I stop reading this. Even before the pandemic, the Auburn Hills branch struggled to generate enough revenue to support its operations, maintenance, and debt service, Weir said. Then came COVID-19. Memberships at the branch dropped from 2,200 to 1,500, a level that isn't sustainable, she said. The branch, which has lost just under $4 million over the past decade, was on track for a $400,000 loss this year. So a sad and unfortunate example at the YMCA, an example here of one of the branches, the third branch as of October 6th to close here in our Metro Detroit market. And it's certainly, as I stated, not the only example. This is happening across the country. This pandemic has just created just such a challenge for fitness facilities, as I've talked about since it started during the month of March. particularly bricks and mortars, building type facilities. It's certainly been a challenge in that area. As I stated here on the SWOT analysis, the opportunities that are truly going gangbusters for entities such as Peloton, Nordic Track, home-based fitness, digital-oriented fitness type of options that we're going to get to here in a minute. But just being open and willing to do things differently. Being open and willing to do things differently. Because yes, the coronavirus is a tremendous threat, but guess what? What are the opportunities that exist in terms of leveraging technology, in terms of doing things differently, pivoting and going in a different direction, being more inclusive of who your target market is, whatever. There's various different ways. This is an opportunity in any season of adversity. I'm a big proponent of this. I'm just known to be very positive and happy and working adversity like a boss. I've been told that's a strength of mine, but that's because I just wouldn't have it any other way. Because adversity comes to all of us. There are no exceptions to that. And something that I've said, this is a Rachelleism I've said for at least a good 10 years now. Life has a way of humbling all of us. Life has a way of humbling all of us. And notice that there's no exception. Adversity comes to every single human being in various forms or fashions, multiple times in life. There's no such thing as a perfect life. There's no such thing as a perpetual winner. We know this in sports. A championship team is not reigning for 5 and 6 years in a row. There's no such thing. If a person he or she may look like they have it all and their life is perfect, and then when you pull back, they pull back the shades, you'll see that there's been adversity, there's been challenge, there's been struggle and hardship, whether or not that person has been willing to admit that publicly. Certainly, we all face adversity. We all face adversity. And so we can go through it. Adversity, yes, is hard, particularly with this pandemic. And I want to be clear, the loss of life, death, dying, sickness, all of that is bad. It is a hard thing. So I'm not talking about that. So let me compartmentalize that and put that off to here. That is a very serious challenge that is facing and is going on in our world. But what I want to talk about, and what I'm talking about in terms of adversity and us finding the silver linings and recognizing, hey, a fitness facility owner might say, hey, I've done things this way for the last 10 years. Perhaps like this YMCA, with all due respect, with this particular branch that struggled even before the pandemic started. What can we do to ensure our other branches survive, just to highlight this respectfully? But this could be somebody who has 3 private studios. I've done things a certain way, and even before the pandemic, when adversity hits, and he or she, the owner, whatever the case may be, is willing to face the reality of, okay, this is what's going on, this is where the market is going. Bricks and mortar facilities, it's going to be very fluid and highly uncertain for the unforeseen future. And so adversity always challenges us to if we're willing to look at things differently, to innovate, to be creative, to be determined, to be willing to overcome the hardships that come, the challenges that come, the struggles that inevitably come to all of us in life. And it truly baffles me. And there's some people where this coronavirus has been the only, in their minds particularly, the only time of hardship for them professionally as a fitness leader or owner. And so where you may have an owner or a fitness facility leader who struggled for the last 5 years. And so that's why I'm saying just the balance. Adversity is a great equalizer. It comes to all of us. It comes to all of us. So when adversity comes to all of us, we have to make a decision. Is this going to make me bitter, or is this going to make me better? Is this going to make me weaker, or is this going to make me stronger? Is this going to make me a victim, or is this going to make me a victor? Okay, and the choice is ours. We have to decide to be victors and overcomers. But we've got to be willing to be open. We've got to be willing to pivot. And here's an example here, just a local example. This actually came in the mail to me in the last week. Schoolcraft College. So they're continuing education and professional development. So they have now, and they have this booklet of all different computer classes, just continuing education. This is a booklet essentially for those who are familiar with continuing education, which many universities will do, colleges and universities. But this is the first one that is now highlighting virtual classes. Now, at the Schoolcraft College, continuing education and professional development, Learn Anywhere, winter 2021. And so what do we have here? An example kicking off on the front page, yoga instructor Greta Ripley. And I put my little placeholder here so I could quickly get to it in the interest of time. But now you have all of their fitness offerings that would be traditionally offered in person are virtual. So look at the spread just quickly. Zumba, a blast fitness class. We've got under strength training and sculpting, we now have fit at any size. Zumba Gold, strength training for seniors 1 and 2. Fit as a Fiddle, total body conditioning and sculpting. Best Body hybrid interval training. All right, so we have an example here, and they've got an example, Schoolcraft College Fitness Center. So physical fitness, just some of the, doctor's review of your health is advised, yada, yada, yada. We see a picture here, an action shot with this gentleman, yes, on a Precor EFX. So that always catches my attention when I notice that. So, and they've made a point to see, if anyone who has doubts, virtual classes are instructor-led in real time. Stream your class from a computer, tablet, or cell phone. There it is right there. But an example, Pivot, college and university, an example here, was willing to pivot and go in a different direction to ensure their future success. And so, have an example here. We talk about digital and leveraging technology and where that goes. Want to highlight another example here from Club Industry Magazine, and it's attributed to the club industry staff. So November 10th, 2020. And the title of this article is on Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness reports 36.8% decline in Q3 2020 revenue, tests digital-only membership. So it goes on to say, third quarter 2020 total revenue for Planet Fitness, Hampton, New Hampshire, decreased $61.4 million or 36.8% to $105.4 million from $166.8 million in the third quarter 2019, the company reported on November 5th. The decrease included a system-wide same-store sales decline of 5.6%. The third quarter revenue loss was less than the 77.9% loss the company experienced in the second quarter due to the temporary closure of health clubs around much of the world through much of the second quarter. The company also shared that it is testing a digital-only membership that it calls PF Plus and would sell for $5.99 per month. The move was partially spurred by high engagement on its mobile app of non-members, and it has in parentheses 20% of subscriptions are non-members, into parentheses, which creates an opportunity for conversion to brick and mortar membership, Planet Fitness CEO Chris Rondeau said on a call with analysts. The company is determining the best way to share that subscription revenue with franchisees. Planet Fitness' new Join app adoption rates were more than 60% in the third quarter. Nearly 30% of the company's total membership base has adopted the app, which includes new features such as in-app messaging or a QR code reader for instructions on how to use the equipment and a crowd meter to check the capacity of each club in advance of going to the gym. Although content on the current mobile app is free, the PF Plus app will feature more premium content, including live daily workouts, digital fitness classes that can be done at home or in the gym, a variety of fitness trainers, and a workout series to help users advance over time. We view our standalone digital membership as a gateway to our traditional brick and mortar membership, not a replacement for it, Rondeau said. And this provides us with an opportunity to further engage inside and outside the gym. The ability to provide even more content for an additional fee introduces prospective members to the brand. Longer-term digital content could potentially strengthen our value proposition to members throughout expanded or bundled offerings, potentially in adjacent categories. So not going to go through revenue numbers and all the rest of this very lengthy article, but just wanted to highlight. So what is the market leader doing? And yes, I'm no longer a member of Planet Fitness. I have no gym membership at this time, as you all know, as I've highlighted in the last couple of episodes. But I'm still going to highlight Planet, much like I did, when I left Powerhouse. Still have respect for the organization, for the franchise, absolutely. So in the context, particularly of fitness trends and marketing and things like that, I will be highlighting Planet forward, certainly anecdotal examples from when I was a member for more than 3 years. Going to be highlighting those, even as you saw with my powerhouse years that I highlighted when I was a member of Planet. And so moving forward in my next gym, but I'm still gonna highlight. There's not a matter of I'm no longer a member of Planet, so I'm never going to mention it again. Absolutely not. Planet is a market leader. The same was true with Powerhouse, one of the early old school fitness chains founded right here in Metro Detroit. So it's going to be the same thing moving forward. So highlighting Planet. So the market leader, what are they doing? Testing a digital membership. And so I wanted to highlight that in their testing and going through and just saying, look at some best practices, what works, what doesn't work. Proof of concept, all of that type of testing, how to figure out how to share some of the revenue of franchisees, and they're working all of that out. But you've had entities, such as I'm about to highlight here in this Chicago Tribune article that appeared. Lauren Zumbach published this on October 23rd, 2020. The title of her article is "Temperatures Drop and COVID-19 Cases Rise, Gyms Turn to Virtual Memberships." And so, as you heard me say earlier in this episode, Chicago is a top fitness market in the world. So you always got to be interested to see what's going on in top fitness markets. What's happening, particularly in your larger, hyper-competitive fitness markets like Chicago. And so this is another very lengthy article that I'm not going to read at all, but essentially you had, and so while Planet is certainly large and publicly traded and they're testing the proof of concept and how to figure out how to pay franchisees, you had other entities, particularly private entities, that pivoted to digital out of utter sheer survival and necessity much earlier in the game. And so I always want to provide that balance to say, yes, this is what the market leader is doing. They're testing this concept, digital-only memberships, but out of sheer necessity, you had other entities far earlier in the process because they absolutely had to do something to survive, to keep their members, to keep them engaged, to certainly from a retention standpoint. So I want to provide that balance. That this has been going, other entities have been doing that kind of stuff for months now. And so this particular article, I want to highlight just a few pockets of it to give you a flavor. Certainly you can go back and find this article, Google it on your own. So it says, when the coronavirus pandemic forced gyms and fitness studios to close in March, the owners of indoor cycling studio Spinergy rented out bikes that would otherwise have sat idle, bought audio and video equipment, and started figuring out how to teach online. As camera sits among the bikes and instructors talk to virtual participants they can see on a screen in addition to riders in the room, said Lisa Ritter, who owns Spinergy's Wicker Park studio. Her mother and aunt own the Winnetka location. Spinergy's virtual classes have helped supplement limited in-person capacity during the pandemic, but Ritter says she's hoping to grow the online business even once those limits lift. The biggest restriction to this business was space. How many butts on bikes can you get, she said. Being able to expand to virtual is kind of cool. Again, being open-minded, being adaptable, being flexible. And we were only lucky to be able to test it with open-minded clients, right? Few see online classes as a replacement for the community that comes with in-person workouts, and fitness clubs and studios say Chicagoans tired of solo home workouts have started returning to gyms and spin classes. But some are still leaning into virtual workouts, especially as COVID-19 cases rise and the threat of new restrictions loom. On Thursday, Mayor Lori Lightfoot imposed a 10 p.m. curfew on non-essential businesses and prohibited indoor service at bars and taverns without a food license, but did not announce any new restrictions on gyms. Virtual programming ensures fitness clubs and studios are prepared if they are later forced to limit in-person classes, especially now that falling temperatures and shorter days make outdoor classes more challenging. They also help clubs stay engaged with members who aren't yet comfortable with indoor workouts or no longer work or live close to their club, especially when faced with competition from companies that specialize in virtual fitness like Peloton. Chicago athletic clubs and fitness formula clubs are preparing to launch virtual memberships early next month. Chicago Athletic Clubs, which has 6 Chicago locations and another in Evanston, which is home to Northwestern, posted home workout ideas on its websites when forced to close in the spring. The virtual membership will include live and on-demand classes. A lot of the reason you join a gym, it's the people, the classes you take, the trainers you see, said Carl Wykow, marketing manager at Chicago Athletic Clubs. If we can provide not only the workout, but those familiar faces, that's what separates us from the plethora of options out there now. And so let me skip a paragraph. The virtual membership at Fitness Formula Clubs will include a home workout equipment package in addition to access to online classes. Fitness Formula is also using virtual programs to expand access to indoor group classes limited to 15 people under the city's guidelines at its 11 Chicago area clubs. Clubs can stream video of an instructor teaching a live class in one studio to other rooms in the club or members working out at home. East Bank Club in River North uses a similar approach. Neither Fitness Formula nor East Bank is crowded, averaging about 65 and 40% of last year's typical daily visits, respectively. Just let me add this here, the importance of benchmarking, saying where your numbers lie, what's happening with your numbers. All right, classes tend to fill because indoor group workouts are capped at 15 people. Formula Fitness, has offered on-demand workouts for about a year. So again, well ahead of the curve. All right, for members who wanted to keep up routines while traveling or found clubs class schedules inconvenient, but interest has picked up during the pandemic, CEO Gail Landers said. He thinks people will continue to want the flexibility of on-demand classes, even though he expects enthusiasms for where home workouts will fade. It's a mobile society, or at least we anticipate we will be again at some point, but for now it gives people options. And so they've got a picture here that shows their social distancing and what's happening here. Workout machines are marked unavailable to be used because of coronavirus distancing, October 22nd, 2020 at Lincoln Park Athletic Club in Chicago. So just highlighting an example, every other machine. And yes, these are pre-core EFX. Made me smile again. All right, let me read a couple more paragraphs and then I'm gonna finish this article. It's lengthy. Feel free to check it out on your own. The pandemic has been tough for gyms. Many saw little or no revenue when forced to close this spring and are still dealing with capacity limits while investing in extra cleaning and new sanitizing equipment. A handful of chains have sought bankruptcy protection since the pandemic began. Flywheel Sports filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy protection and shutdown according to court filings. 24 Hour Fitness, which planned to open 4 Chicago area clubs this year, filed for Chapter 11 and intends to restructure and continue operating. And folks, there have been other bankruptcy filings and all of that. But like I said, didn't want to spend too much time focusing on that. Want to positively focus on what people are doing, how entities are pivoting. And this is an example here, Chicago hyper fitness market, been doing on demand for the last year. So even before the pandemic, saw the shift happening in the industry, leveraging technology, and now you've got the infrastructure in place to be able to fall back on that, as opposed to many folks were caught off guard and just had to ramp up that the technology, the ability to adapt to the changes. And so this is a very quick something I wanted to mention. This was from Inc. magazine. And so this is a November 2020 episode or issue. And so the Insider article here is highlighting Soul Cycle, which is group fitness classes, legendary. A lot of people love. They have a lot of fanatical members love Soul Cycle. And so you have an example here. And it's the title of this snippet here article is I Can't Live Without Soul Cycle. And so the article goes on to state, I was never great at going to the gym, says 32-year-old Ankur Jain, founder and CEO of an investment firm, Kairos. I prefer the group experience, the teachers, the music. I just want to get a cardio workout and just escape an otherwise really intense workday. Getting that group experience was impossible once the pandemic closed exercise studios in March. So 2 weeks into quarantine, Jane bought himself a $2,500 Soul Cycle bike. They really did a good job in terms of the quality of the content, he says, of the bike's creator. It feels like you're in a studio for real, from the sound quality to the music and the courses. And the bike has been a big productivity booster. When you spend all day on calls, working through problems, at some point you get a little mentally drained, especially when you're living, sleeping, and working in the same space, he says. So stepping back and getting that sweat in is like a restart. You go into the next part of your day clear-headed. And this was written by Tim Crino. So Soul Cycle had to pivot and offer on-demand and sell their bikes, much like Peloton. So from a competitive analysis standpoint, so now you've got a competitor, you've got SoulCycle, which has stepped up now posing competitive threats to Peloton, which we know has been rocking and rolling throughout this pandemic. So had to share that, just had to share that. So I highlighted an example of a reader of Oprah magazine last week who said all she knew was gyms, and that she's been running outdoors and she just really likes it, and it's just been a wonderful experience for her, and her eyes were open. And so Oprah, obviously highly influential, and had that early on in the magazine, and I'm highlighting this, highly influential for entrepreneurs and business owners. So you had, Mr. Jane saying in this article, hey, I spent $2,500. This is working well for me. And so just another example of how you have influencers really, really highlighting things, and how virtual offerings and on-demand offerings and at-home fitness options are working well for them. And so in the spirit of balance, I always like to provide balance and give examples that either inside the fitness industry, outside the fitness industry, different realms in terms of the fitness industry. And so I want to close this article out by highlighting, so this appeared in the November-December 2020 edition of Athletic Business. And so what it is focusing on is military fitness. And I smiled when I saw this, as it brought back memories as I got my start at the Barksdale Air Force Base, the old location, the old hangar that it was located in, Barksdale Air Force Base Fitness Center in May of 1994. So I always smile and just think this, it was such a great beginning to my fitness journey. And so the title of this article, as you can see here, not going to read it all, but you see I've got some highlighted, some important points. Title of this article is How the Army is Keeping Soldiers Safe and Fit During the Pandemic. So why am I highlighting this article? In the spirit of balance, what you have, yes, I've talked about community-oriented fitness centers that are facing, in chains, facing big challenges, commercial, facing big challenges. So what you have here is a military component, in the fitness industry, the overall fitness industry, where you have a different set of variables and how they are dealing with this pandemic, but you have a different set of variables in this equation. So you've got fitness requirements for military members, all right, as opposed to the regular general public. You don't have that, all right, you don't have that. So you've got requirements and motivation levels that are certainly going to be higher than the general population. And number two, fitness facilities, they don't charge membership fees. All right, so that's covered by, the federal government and military installations run those facilities, taxpayer funds and all things like that. So another aspect that you don't have in the commercial side, and the community side, and the private side of the fitness industry in terms of facilities is that profit motive. So you've got very different motives, and I love this example, and I just love to think about the military aspect of that, and think about that's where I got my start. And so you have very different variables. You have very, very different variables, and I want to highlight this as an example, particularly for those who are commercial, private, community, so you can see kind of what is happening in the realm of military fitness, where you don't have the same type of, yes, you have challenges, yes, you have adversity and things like that, because again, you have standards, fitness standards and tests and PT tests that have to be passed. All right, so you have these standards and expectations that are there, but then how do you shift? How do you pivot in that realm? Whereas the general public, you want to keep people paying for memberships, you want to keep people signing up, but it's just a very different animal. But the military has certainly pivoted and done well in shifting, given their needs and their expectations and standards for fitness. And so it's just a wonderful example. So Andy Berg highlighted this. And so let me highlight just a few parts of this article. So it goes on to say, building the airplane in flight. That's the tagline Lori Smith kept hearing when trying to cope with the evolving effects of this coronavirus pandemic. It really felt like that was what we were doing, says Smith, sports and fitness director at U.S. Army Fort Benning, which straddles the border between Georgia and Alabama. What was nice was that as we went along, from initially closing facilities to reopening, there were people at all levels of the Army who were willing to try a lot of different things to keep people active and healthy. While the Army and its civilian-run family and morale, welfare, and recreation facilities implemented many of the same measures as civilian commercial gyms, the military has had to face the pandemic on its own terms. All right, so let me skip a little bit. And so it says, an outbreak at an Army post like Fort Benning which supports more than 120,000 active duty military members, family members, reserve component soldiers, retirees, and civilian employees, would be an especially difficult situation to manage. In parentheses, see the 1918 influenza pandemic. End of paragraph. End of parentheses. Many soldiers live in barracks and they eat, sleep, and train together, increasing the potential for spread of the virus. As was the case across much of the United States, Fort Benning closed all 5 of its fitness facilities back in March. The base was able to reopen in stages at limited capacity around the middle of June, but the period of time when everything was locked down was a precarious moment for soldiers stationed at large military installations. Unlike civilians who may have slipped into poor eating habits or who may have skipped their evening workout in favor of a Netflix binge, soldiers needed to stay battle ready while also ensuring they were prepared for the Army Combat Fitness Test. Fitness is a large word for our soldiers, and it kind of means a lot of things to a lot of people, says Fort Hood Sports and Fitness Director John Hamilton, who oversees 11 fitness centers. It means health and fitness and readiness for the mission. Ooh, let me skip here. All right. It means making sure these young soldiers are lethal and ready to deploy and ready to meet the mission of the Army and beyond. To that end, Hamilton says that his team tried everything it could to stay in communication with soldiers during the lockdown, utilizing social media platforms to keep everyone apprised of the situation, while offering virtual workouts, running programs, and other at-home activities to make sure soldiers had at least some tools to help them stay fit. Skipping a little bit in the interest of time, Smith says she's been heartened by the creativity and adaptability she's seen among soldiers. Even with all of her facilities currently reopened with capacity restrictions in place, some of those solutions developed during lockdown seem to have stuck. I think units have gotten very creative in how they do their workouts, Smith says. I come in the morning and there will be guys out in the parking lot doing group workouts and running stairs, just doing everything they can to stay fit, which is nice to see. Skipping quite a bit here towards the end. At Fort Benning, the command here, so again, Smith is generous with her praise for the leadership at her post. So let me go on here. At Fort Benning, the command here was really good about putting out specific do's and don'ts to mitigate the risks as we reopen, she says, noting that implementing things like a mandatory mask policy was made easier when it had the backing of command. The mask wearing was a huge challenge, she said. Initially, you only had to wear a mask when you were moving about. Well, 6 feet quickly became about 2 inches. So we just found you can't give an inch. It really has to be all or nothing. On that issue, command was really great. They came in and said everyone's going to wear a mask. They put that in place and really took it out of my hands. And people did. And people did. All right? People did. And so, and that's a whole other dynamic where you have military, when the top dog, when the general, when the base commander says this has to happen, okay, it's going to drive compliance down, where it's tougher with just regular, non-military oriented facilities that have that profit motive, where they're concerned about members canceling and revenue impacts and all of that. So I always like to provide balance, but this is just a wonderful example, just to highlight some of the differences. So yes, the military is playing with different variables, but they also face challenges as well with this pandemic. So I just wanted to highlight that example of how they are making things happen. And yes, it's quite a wonderful experience. And I'm just so grateful that I did get my start at the Barksdale Air Force Base Fitness Center back in 1994, May 17th. And for those who don't know, you may have just been watching this episode for the first time. I was not in the military. We had relocated to Barksdale after leaving Korea. At the time, my parents were civil service. They're retired now, but that's how we ended up actually at Barksdale Air Force Base. And so I was a dependent of civil service employees and started working out right there, the base fitness center. Gotta love it. And so folks, there it is. There it is. Examples of what folks are doing in the midst of adversity. How are they working to make sure that the mission in the military, the mission has to continue. All right, the mission has to continue. They've got to keep moving forward. And the same is true in the private and community oriented fitness facilities, commercials as well. All right, just as a matter of being open, being adaptable, being creative, being flexible in what you're doing. It's wonderful to think, okay, in 10 years, and this is what we've done for the last 15 years, and I may be comfortable with you may be comfortable with that. and that's all you know, but it's time to be open-minded. It's time to expand and enlarge your vision of what is possible. What is possible, because we're all facing adversity. All types of fitness entities are facing adversity, and so it's just a matter of determining, okay, am I going to allow this to make me bitter or better? All right, are my facilities and my leadership, from a leadership perspective, are we going to emerge weaker or stronger? Or are we going to be victims or victors in this situation? And I believe you have what it takes to be victorious in this situation. So I just challenge you to evaluate where you are, what you're doing, and just leverage technology and the power, that all that wonderful power that it's offered us to be able to, retain your members, but also to recruit new members and moving forward. And so the game has changed. The game has changed. The scope of the game has changed. And I just always want you to be successful and to put yourself in position to take the shot. All right, by not adapting, by not being open and flexible and creative and innovative, and you're just set in your ways and stuck in a corner, upset about the changes that are happening in our world. All right, that's not putting you in position to take the shot. All right, you got to put yourself in position to take the shot by making the necessary changes and doing whatever you have to do, controlling what you control, controlling what you can control, to ensure the viability of your facility or facilities moving forward, folks. So that's all I have for you today. It's been great. I can't wait till next week when I talk to you about Rachelle's fitness adventures while I was in Shreveport, Louisiana for a few weeks. And I'm going to be highlighting Rachelle's first outdoor fitness experience, encountering a stray dog. Something like that has never happened to me before, but that's because outdoor fitness was never an option before, until I went to Shreveport earlier, in the summer, June and July, and then went back in September and October. And so, but didn't encounter any dogs during that June and July visit, but encountered a stray dog back when I was just there, day after my birthday, September 14th. So I'll share what happened with you that morning, as well as some other things. So folks, stay tuned for that. But until then, remember, I am positively passionate about your leadership, fitness, and success. Make it a great day.